Everybody knows that I'm breaking down. Everybody knows I ain't faking now. Everybody knows my heart's vacant now. Yeah, she hates me now, I made mistakes but now I don't ever wanna be alone. I don't really ever feel at home. On my own, in the zone, that's the only way I know. Feeling low, about to blow back up. Here I never let the doubt creep in. Gotta pop a couple more aspirin. I don't think I'll ever let you in. Easier to break it off as friends. I don't really understand myself. I don't really understand, need help. I don't wanna be left on the shelf. Couldn't even hear me if I yelled. It's so cold outside. I'm alone, I'm alright. It's so cold outside. I'm alone, I'm alright. It's so cold outside.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the All Sports Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Sumit Kadal.
I am your second co-host, Lachlan Turner.
I'm your third co-host, Liam McDonald.
I'm the fourth co-host and editor. My name is Adrian Boucher. I'd like to shout out our socials. So for Instagram, it is All Sports 2021, and for Facebook, it is just All Sports. So please like it up, please.
And also, don't forget our YouTube channel, which is called All Sports Podcast. And we can be found on Spotify. So if you want to find that, just go into our bio on Facebook and you'll be able to find the links to where you can listen to our podcast. And yeah, we hope you enjoy. Actually, you know what? I've got a good idea. I want to start off by talking about cricket. Now, what as you do, you scroll through Facebook and when you say something interesting, you often if there's like an article or, if you're interested in it, you often look at it. And I looked at it was an article, although I didn't read it, I just read the title and I knew exactly what it meant. So Michael Holding, we all know he was a cricketer, I believe, for West Indies. Yeah. And really good commentator.
Not just a cricketer, an all-time great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, an all-time great. Yeah, agreed there. And a really good commentator. I love listening to him. Well, did, because he's now retiring from that. But he said something that made me think a lot about the state of cricket. Now, and I'm quoting him here. I'll miss the friendships that I've made. I'll miss the great people I work with, but I won't miss the game because I think it's supposed to say it is not the game that I started playing. Now, back then, you got to remember, this is, I think when he played, was this before players really started to wear helmets?
A bit like that, but look, it's not like, I don't think he meant the actual game itself. I think what he meant is what it represents.
And the state of the. I agree, because now if you were to ask anybody and ask them if they like cricket, they will say yes. But what they say yes to is more so probably the shorter format, which is T20 cricket. Now, and ODI, but see, I can stand ODI because that's been a thing for 30, 40, what? Well, are we getting towards 50 years? No, 40 years? 40 years with ODIs?
Yep.
Or 50 years. So, that's been around for a while. But it's, the T20, I think, has just ruined the longer format, particularly Test cricket. Now, Test cricket will always remain my favourite form of the game because the name has a meaning to it. Test cricket, it tests you physically, tests you mentally. I mean, people would probably struggle to believe unless you play cricket out on the pitch, it's often much hotter than it is. I think so. It might be 35 degrees on the pitch. At the pitch, it could be 50. And you're wearing pants and often a long sleeve jumper, all padded
Absolutely,
up.
yeah.
So you can imagine what it's like, sweating it out. And and then you got the bowlers, the quick ones, especially, every innings for Test cricket, because for those who don't necessarily understand Test cricket. You know, each country gets two times to bat or bowl unless something happens. And well, I just think, you know, T20 cricket has ruined the game, you know, because I mean, for example, and this is an allegation against India that they now I don't know if they deliberately got themselves exposed or went to an exposed site so they could then go back home to play in the IPL, which is a domestic T20 competition, which players can earn millions playing for their team. Now, it's gotten to the point now where players are thinking about the money, and you know, you'll get people that'll be like, Liam, to answer your question, it was India, because the test series that they had over in England, it was supposed to be, was it a five test
It was
series?
supposed to be a 5-test series, but look, I don't think that they went and got themselves quarantined or had a false allegation of COVID or went and got themselves exposed
But
just so they could play in the IPL, you know, because
that's convenient because the IPL was to start up again about a week or two.
I know it does sound convenient, but you know, this like, look, India defeated Australia in their backyard, and they were one victory away or one draw away even from defeating England in their own backyard. So that's a much bigger thing than, you know, participating in the IPL. So I don't think they would have done that on purpose. And COVID is a serious thing. And you know, I don't think anybody would just go and recklessly get, you know, caught up in COVID just so they could then, you know, have their teammates go and play IPL even more. So, you know,
Yeah, well, I mean, what's your take on this? Do you think that it was convenient that, you know, they, like, I don't know, that, you know, they went to an exposed site, so then the 5th and last test was cancelled just so that they could play IPL cricket to make, you know, some of those players are making millions playing that?
I think it's a bit of a stretch to go say that they got themselves exposed to COVID and then draw a line to them wanting to play IPL.
I'm not saying that they got. I don't think any of the players got COVID or, you know, they got COVID. But I'm saying I'm pretty sure they. I don't know if they went to an exposure site, but they went somewhere that they shouldn't have gone, and that caused a lot of issues, which meant that the last test had to get cancelled. So I don't think they. From memory, I don't think they actually went to an exposed area. I think they went to somewhere where they weren't allowed to go to. I think the place they went to wasn't exposed, but I think they had like their restrictions of what they can and can't do. Well, obviously because of COVID, but I just find it too convenient. And, you know, players are choosing money, and, you know, they'll often say, oh, you know, they'd rather go home, and blah, 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 blah. But I'm not buying the fact that, you know, take Josh Butler, for instance. He left, was it after the first or second test when England went over to India? You know, and his wife was expecting, was it like a kid or like a baby? I'm pretty sure that was the case. That's fair enough. Like I can understand that, but you know, and you know, you get too many players that are just just full on concentrating on the short format, being aggressive. Then, you know, if they were to go into like the test arena, they'd struggle because, you know, you got to, you know, there are just sometimes where you got to grind out some, you know, innings, which is why, you know, one of my favorite batters to watch, and, you know, Liam, you might moan and groan at this, but I love watching Pujara batting.
Okay.
I do.
I get that he's good, and that the fact that he can bat for like 8 hours straight is like a really good skill, but a couple more runs couldn't hurt anyone, could they?
I'm not saying that it couldn't, but I mean, he's just playing to what the game is supposed to be. You know, it's testing you. He's not only testing himself, but he's testing the bowlers to see who is just going to, you know, clutch first. And we saw firsthand what he did to Australia in 2018. it's fair to say he was probably the big reason as to why India got up. Not because, he was scoring a lot of runs, but because, he was forcing the Australian bowlers to bowl multiple overs and stay out for, out of those 5 days, probably a total of 3.5 days, which is just taxing on, on your body. So, well, it's really hard. And then, you look at some of, some of the best batters in the world. I think out of all the top 5, top 10 batters, I can probably picture maybe 2 or 3 that will actually grind out, like an innings. If your country, needs you to grind out, stick fat, these players will do that. Whereas other players, Kohli won't. He wants to score runs quickly. He won't. Babar Azam for Pakistan. They don't know how to play in a slow manner. Same with David Warner. He doesn't know how to.
Okay. Babar Azam is like the best player on the Pakistani team. It's almost at the point where if he doesn't score runs, they don't score runs.
But then it's also the same with Australia. If it's not Smith or Labuschagne, who scores?
Yeah, but sometimes they can't afford to stick fat like a Pujara can, because Pujara's in the team to stick fat.
There is no one in the Australian team that is specifically their wall. You know what I mean? You know how India have had Dravid and Pujara. There is no one specifically in Australia for that role. All the Australian batsmen, in my point of view, are very attacking. They want to make runs. They want to score runs. They'll get runs. But there's no one there that will, block for 50 balls, then make their first run.
I will say that before Labuschagne, from periods of time and early on in the India series, he did, he was going at a very slow rate. I think when he scored that first innings in the first test where he scored 40, didn't he face like 120 something deliveries?
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. But if you look at his other performance, that's one out of many performances.
Yeah,
many
I know.
Innings
That's right. But what I'm saying is, the other bloke for Pakistan that, could look like could bat is what's his name? Mohammad Rizwan. I remember when they came over to Australia a few years ago, he actually did all right as a batter. But, I mean, he was very attacking, which is, attacking does have its pros, but for a longer format, it has a lot of cons.
I feel like in Pakistan, there is one of the batsmen that can score. I think his name is Fakhar Zaman, something. Not too sure. He scored about 190 against England, almost saving the game.
Yeah.
I reckon he is one prospective player. You can see the past few innings also, I think he has performed a bit. But, he could be, alongside Babar Azam in there. But, yeah.
But who have you got for New Zealand? That's the other, who's the other bloke?
New Zealand currently...
Kane Williamson's an attacking batsman. You can't tell me that
he's an attacking batsman. Ross Taylor used to be one of their, solid, obviously I know he's old. I know, but I still have faith in him. But I'd put Ross Taylor up there. Now the new player, Devon Conway as well. He has shown.
He's a bit of a grinder as well.
Yeah.
He can grind if required. And, and then for England, well, we know it's either Joe Root or bust. And we all know that the Barmy Army tried to have a bit of a dig at Tim Payne because, what is it that Joe Root needs to score 80 more runs and he'll, equal Tim Payne's career runs in Test Arena. But see, now I feel like that comparison, and I'm not being angry, as an Australian, whatnot, but I think it's very hard to compare a guy who bats at number 3 or 4 to a guy batting in at number 7.
Exactly.
And also a guy who's been a consistent lock in his team for the best part of 10 years.
That's exactly right. And I just, and then there were, but then I don't think the English were too happy when somebody brought up the batting stats other than Joe Root. You look through, Tim Payne has a better average than most of England's top order, all but Joe Root. Best Butler average
And if you
35.
see what that means, like Joe Root has scored almost 1,500 runs in this year alone in tests. Okay, that's good. He's been doing good. But then Tim Payne hasn't been scoring much. That literally means the same thing. That means that
But that,
number 7 hasn't gotten to bat much. That means that the
but
top
then
and middle order of Australia is doing their
but
job. They're doing good.
you
It's
look at
not,
how
you can't do that. Like you can't compare. I completely agree with you. You can't compare that.
But then you also look at how many tests England have played this year compared to Australia. Australia played what, 2 tests this year?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then England have played at what 10? Like 10 or something, nine tests, probably more than that. Because if you include, how many test series have they had? They had the test series against didn't Pakistan come over or go
Pakistan
over?
went over there. Then they had the 4 matches against India. So that's 6 matches. And then who else did they play?
New Zealand.
They had played New Zealand, exactly.
And then India came over to England, and then they're going to play what, 2 or 3 Ashes tests.
Exactly. So they've had well more than 10. They went to India. They've got New Zealand and Pakistan in there. India's went there.
So that's why. So what I'm saying is, if they had played, similar, similar, test matches in a year, I'd still find it very hard to give that, a par, because it's, because you got 2 guys batting in at completely different batting orders, and well, one's like if it's all on him. So, I understand the pressure Joe Root's under, but, then for Australia, you look at the Aussies, they've got Steve Smith, Marnus Labuschagne, and towards the end of it, Cam Green looked like a really good player.
Yeah.
He started to perform with the bat. Didn't he scored two half centuries?
Yeah, I think he did.
So
he got close to scoring a century as well in one of the innings. So that was very good.
Yeah, the Sydney which, look, that's going to be interesting, and it'll just be very interesting to see, where the state of the game heads. Will Test cricket, will there be a love for that? Again, probably not like it was years ago, but I can say that it is my favourite form of cricket. I will sit down all day to watch it, because it's just
absolutely me too. It's just something about it, like even with ODIs and T20s, I get bored very easily, but then I'll watch a 5-day test series. So
yeah, I'd much rather watch. That's probably why they brought in, what is it, the Champions Trophy for the test.
Yeah,
which and look, that's a good concept. I like that. Maybe that's to reignite the interest in Test cricket from other nations and other players. But we've seen that a lot of West Indian and Sri Lankan cricketers, they're retiring. From like Test cricket, but they'll continue with the shorter format.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I'm thinking that's. Well, yeah, look, you're technically representing your country, if you play T20 stuff, but I just really call T20 just, backyard bash. I mean, it's like who can score the most runs in a limited amount of time.
That's the whole point of the game, is who can score the most amount of runs.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know that, but
no,
it's
but
like,
look, the focus. I think what he means is that the focus nowadays is more on T20, and because like you see, the Test Championship was. The first Test Championship was started in 2019, whereas the first T20 World Cup was started in 2005 or something, way back when. So, it goes to show you. Like,
I just don't agree with, the way Test cricket has been treated.
Yeah, it's because the top 4 club, like all the really powerful clubs, just play each other over and over. The Test Championship was kind of brought in to ensure that the smaller nations, your Afghanistans, your West Indies, your Bangladeshs, like get games against teams like Australia and England, like outside of them just playing each other every summer.
But then you also look at, like you compare years gone past, how many test matches Australia used to play. They don't play probably half as what they did back, years ago. Now they're playing. They'd be lucky to play 5 test matches in a year.
Well, we normally play anywhere from 5 to 7 in a home summer.
Yeah, but
then we do a travel, and then we travel somewhere else and play a series there. It's just the last couple years we haven't because of the pandemic.
But what about before that? Because what I'm saying is, our home summer will usually consist of maybe a test series that'll be 3 or 4, like, maybe 3 to 5 T20 internationals and 3 or 4 ODIs. Now, as I said, I'll go by ODIs. I don't mind that because, that has been in the game for a while. But a lot of the focus has gone to T20, which is not something that I agree with.
We live in the age of short attention spans. There's a reason TikTok is the most popular app on the planet at the moment.
That's true.
Well,
that's true.
yeah,
But in all fairness, they should, focus a bit more on tests. They should reignite people's passion for tests.
But the players are like a bunch of players. If you listen to a bunch of the players that actually do make it into the test team, they say that getting into the test team was like their ultimate goal in cricket.
You do realize that they're probably. Look, I'm not saying that's not true, but I mean, it's like really weird. Like, no, I just don't know because you get some players that look like that. They're just being robotic. They just say the same thing. Every new player, oh, this is what I've dreamed of. Blah blah blah. I mean, I know I get you're excited, but it just sounds like they're just like reading something off a script that they've just been given.
They get media training so that they don't mess up and get absolutely vilified by the media.
Oh. But there's also no harm in speaking, not most cases, but in that case, wasn't necessarily my ultimate dream to play Test cricket, but I'm glad to be here. That's being honest. I don't think that there's anything wrong with being honest like that. So
yeah, but you're also not a journalist that's going to report it to death for the rest of their Test career.
Well, I don't know. I mean, having a few journalists killed a few careers, and not just in cricket, but in other sports as well.
Exactly. That's why they get media training, so they don't say what they actually think, because they get in trouble and ruined for what they think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I caught on to what you're saying. I agree. But I just don't agree with. I mean, I know I'm just saying the same thing over and over again, but I just don't agree with where they're putting Test cricket, amongst their, when they go through and, they go, all right, when they go through the fixtures and release them, I just don't agree with the fact that, Test cricket, I mean, I could argue that Test cricket is low on their priority, like on every cricket, maybe not every cricket board's priority, but it's like low on priorities of, for games because, T20 is what brings in, the money. And
at the end of the day, it's an unfortunate fact that cricket, just like pretty much all other professional sports, is a business. And you get more money from hosting 5 2020s than you do from hosting 1 test match.
Actually, there's actually a case to argue that, a cricket show, I mean, obviously, if, now that it's confirmed going on, they're going to make probably more money than they would hosting a T20 tournament. And that's a blown out fact.
Yeah, because you get to put in more games in so you get like a 5 test series, you have to dedicate 25 days of playing, and then you have to give let's say 3-4 days in between as break, as the minimum you could give them.
Yeah, so
whereas with
2020, 2 months.
Yeah, and then with 2020s you can schedule 25 games in 30 odd days with a 6-team competition, and you can have pretty much a game every day.
Yeah,
and it works.
All right, so we're just gonna. So what do you agree on that? what would you like to agree on? Like, would you like to just agree that, Test cricket is unfortunately, not. Hang on.
Yeah.
Shut up.
What do you? So yeah, what would you like? What would you agree on? We'd love to hear your thoughts and message us, chuck it in the comments, anything. What do you agree on? Do you think that Test cricket is dying? Do you love Test? Do you want it to come back, or do you think that it's T20 cricket is all right and the focus on it is okay? So
2, 1. Yeah. All right. So we know the last 3 dynasties that or the last, 2 clubs that have, won 3 flags in a row or won multiple flags in a short amount of time, Brisbane and Hawthorn, they didn't necessarily recruit for the future, which I think is a key part. I think every club needs to, look towards the future. Geelong, they've heavily invested in trying to win a premiership, but ultimately I think it's just going to backfire. I think they need, next year is their last chance at trying to win a flag. And if they don't, well, I think they have to go into complete rebuild mode.
I think that's the problem. That's the problem with like getting success like that in a really short period of time is you always chase that one more.
Yeah, but now that you can, it's always been a thing where you can trade draft picks, and obviously a few years ago it was a thing where you could trade future picks, which, by the way, Melbourne has become really good with that. But I want to talk about Richmond and why I still think I'm not counting them out just yet, because they have, recently, it does help that they've had injuries, and it doesn't help that, that they've had injuries and whatnot. And, they've still won premierships, but some of the young players are very, very good. Like, people are forgetting that Riley Collier-Dawkins was a top draft prospect, like not even 3 years ago. And the reason why he hasn't got a game, you just look at Richmond's midfield at the moment, Kane Lambert, Dion Prestia, Martin, Cochin, who's that? Shane Edwards. You're not getting a game, regardless of, if you're the top pick. I don't even think the top pick would get a game in Richmond's midfield if all those midfielders were healthy for Richmond. And, the other one, Tom Dow. Thomas Dow, he was a, really good, talented player, drafted a couple of years ago. But what I'm saying is I do think Richmond have the, young talent to kind of like progress them. And, we saw a lot of it this year when, Richmond lost a lot of players, whether it was to injury or, in Daniel Rioli's case, just poor form. But he had a positional change, which worked for him. He was more involved in the game. So I do think Richmond have some good young players, coming through,
like
talented
who?
Well, I mentioned, a couple, Riley Collier-Dawkins, Thomas Dow. Well, I would have said Callum Coleman-Jones, but he's now gone.
Where's he gone?
He went to, he got traded to North just a couple of days ago. This year it's shaping up to be that they'll have one of the strongest draft hands that they've had. Hopefully they don't, botch it like they did all those years ago where they drafted, Richard Tambling, Danny Meyer, and Adam Patterson. And, in reality, they could have just gotten, they could have drafted, Franklin, and, could have drafted Roughhead as well. But, we've all heard that story where, they picked Tambling over Franklin. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you think Richmond are out of the premiership window? Do you think they're out?
If they get as injured as they were this year, then yeah, the ship has probably sailed. But there's also, as you said, they've got a bunch of draft picks for the first time since before they went on their run. So
yeah, again, that's just that's just the unfortunate thing, as you said. We've been successful, but there's always been that opportunity where, they were able to, you can change draft picks, as long as, you're willing to give something up and whatnot. If you make a really good offer and a, terrible club, that needs experience, think of, Gold Coast, for example, they could have used a lot of, Hawthorn's, good players in their era. And, well, I mean, they didn't necessarily ask the question, did they? So,
well, that's the problem. When you're that far away, becoming a retirement home for a bunch of players, like champion players from another club, doesn't exactly help you as much, because you actually have to have the players in there first to get the help from having such an experienced player around.
Again, and I agree. I think you get more credibility using your own, your own players that you drafted. Like, we know Richmond's first premiership they won in 2017 throughout the era. I had 3 new starters playing for them: Caddy, Prestia, Nankervis. 2019, they got Lynch, and I don't think anybody from another club in 2020, other than those, what was it, 4 players actually played in the flag for Richmond. So, what does that mean for Richmond? Look, that remains to be,
They're still gonna win, bro. Don't worry about it.
Jeez, you're very confident, are you?
Oh, hell yeah. Best team.
You know what? I love the confidence that you have in your team. So we go to a team that has not had any success at all for the past 30 years, and that's the Carlton Football Club. Now, we saw that the trade for Cerra got done a lot earlier than a lot of people thought. I think it was on a Thursday. And, people are already getting excited. Oh, yes, Carlton, they're going to get a, top player. Oh, this guy was taking pick 5, 4 or 5 years ago, and, blah, 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 blah. Well, sorry to break it to you, Carlton fans, but I've listed your midfielders. Now, I've gone on the AFL app and I went down and listed your top, players that you took, or not necessarily took. For example, I've got Matt Kennedy and Will Setterfield, who were drafted by other clubs, but they were first round draft picks. I've listed Paddy Dow, who was taken with pick 3 of 2017, Lockie O'Brien, pick 10, 2017, Matthew Kennedy, pick 13, 2015, Patrick Cripps, pick 13, 2013, Will Setterfield, pick 5, 2016, and Sam Walsh, pick 1, 2018. Now, I went and graded. When I say graded, like, I gave them, a tick cross, or just like one of those, just lines.
A line through them.
Yeah, a line, which means they may have had one or two good years, but that they won't get back to where they were.
Hold on, before you get started with this, based on that list you just said, Sam Walsh and Paddy Cripps are probably the only 2 players I'd say that I'd rate above Cerra.
This is what I wrote. Paddy Dow, he got an automatic cross. In fact, I think if it wasn't for Richmond taking Tambling, I reckon Dow would be the biggest draft bust in history at the moment.
Wow. Ouch.
So that's, again, that's just my opinion. Lockie O'Brien, pick 10. Again, he'd probably be the second or third draft bust. I mean, injuries haven't held him, but when he was playing, he wasn't necessarily doing much. Then Matt Kennedy, he probably started his career for, but again, I've given him a cross because, Carlton just won't play him for some reason when he averages a lot of possessions in the seconds, and you should be rewarding your players for second performances and give them a few games to see if they perform, which Kennedy has, but he still gets across because just hasn't been given enough opportunities to do that. Now, Paddy Cripps is the one where I've given him a line because he was good for probably 2 seasons. He was a clearance player, and I know we spoke about this in the first episode, but they mark clearances based on handballs, which is what he does. That doesn't cut it. And I did say that part of his problem was, and he was going to get caught out for this, was being too slow for the modern game. And he is really slow, and he got caught out a lot. Now, trying to tell me that he's injured, blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry, but if he was seriously that injured, he would have said, no, don't pick me as a player. And he didn't. And he's the captain.
He needed to play. He's been their best midfielder for years.
Sam Walsh took him
Sam Walsh
literally
hasn't been
2020.
there for years.
Sam Walsh has probably done more than what Patrick Cripps did in his first 3 years at that club.
Yeah, well,
At
Sam
that
Walsh
stadium-
also has the advantage of having a guy like Paddy Cripps getting tagged.
No, I tell you what Sam Walsh has that Cripps probably doesn't. That's going behind the scenes and working on some of his deficiencies. And Patrick Cripps' biggest deficiency is his kicking. Walsh is he's an all right kick. You know, the only thing I'd say that he would need to work on is, that North Melbourne game when they lost to North, he had 27 touches and he didn't have, that big impact. But either way, I still give Sam Walsh a tick, because, he has produced and he's been a consistent performer since day dot. Cripps, you can't say has been. And Will Setterfield, pick 5, 2016. Injuries and whatnot haven't necessarily helped him. But again, they tried playing him, on the inside or the outside, and it just didn't work for him. And, they didn't give him a chance. Now, Adam Cerra was taken with pick 5. Now, there's no doubt, he'll add a lot to this team. But what I want to say is that, and I think I did make the comparison or said something about this last time, you can have all the top draft picks on your squad, but if they aren't willing to put in the work or, put in the hard yards or, blah, 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 they're not, it doesn't necessarily always work out. Now, we know that Carlton has a lot of first round, all Australian caliber players on that list. Let's not lie about that. They do. On, all 3 facets of the game, their forward line, probably Harry Mackay is the one that's saving them there. Defense, they've probably got Liam Jones and Wiedering. And then midfield, Sam Walsh and, Paddy Cripps, as much as, I think he's been a bit of a, he's definitely gone
Overrated?
down.
You'd have to say he's slightly overrated, in your opinion. Not my opinion. I think Paddy Cripps.
I definitely he was overrated. But, he, you got him there, and, Cerra's another one that could potentially get an All-Australian at some point in his career. That remains to be seen. But then you look at Sydney. Now, you go through when Sydney were making those finals in consecutive years, how many first-round picks they actually had playing in that midfield?
How many did they have playing in that midfield?
The only bloke I could think of that was actually taken early, and I don't even know if you classify him as a midfielder at that time, Isaac Heaney. Josh Kennedy wasn't a first-round pick. Hanbury wasn't a first-round pick. Luke Parker wasn't a first-round pick. Hewitt, when he wasn't a first-round pick. I think he was a second or a third-round pick, but he probably does. He might add something to that Carlton midfield, being that lockdown player. And I think Paddy Cripps or Sam Walsh is thinking, yes, I won't have to put up with Hewitt, because Hewitt, in his couple of games that he did play against Carlton, he absolutely torched Patrick Cripps. And I think that was the other downside. Cripps didn't know how to shake a tag. And the reason why teams didn't, and I've noticed that teams would really tag him because most clubs don't think that he actually has the impact that everybody thinks he has. And I mean, look, I agree with those clubs, but what I'm getting at is, for all these first round picks that Carlton have in their midfield, that doesn't necessarily mean they're guaranteed to make top 8. People are already talking about top 4 finishes and whatnot. You got to get the work ethic in. I don't know what Michael Voss was like at Brisbane, whether, that was an issue there. I don't know. But, if those clubs, like, take Zach Bishop, for example, again, another, I think he was a second rounder. He's more interested in doing his podcast than he is actually playing football. And that's what I heard a Carlton fan say.
Well,
as
it's a good thing we're only doing a podcast, not trying to play football, huh? Isn't it, Lockie?
Well, that is a bit funny and ironic that I did that I did say that, but some of these players just I don't think have the work ethic, and I'm not saying that the deficiencies that some of these players have, but they have to be perfect at them, but get better. And I keep bringing up Patrick Cripps, being compared to Joe Watson in his drafty, because Joe Watson in his drafty, you compare the two players, both were a bit, let's be honest, they were both a bit chubby in their drafty, really slow, couldn't kick. What was the one thing Joe Watson did that he worked on and it got him to be the player that he was? And no, I'm not referring to a certain incident or what certain, happened, but what did he do that it's clear that Patrick Cripps, probably running out of time, because, people are forgetting Patrick Cripps is there get to about 26, 27. So he's running out of
Don't
bit of
forget,
time.
that's like considered the athletic prime, by the way. That's like peak of your powers is from your 26 through to 29.
I'm not disagreeing with you there, but I mean, your kicking is something that you kind of have limited. Not necessarily limited amount of time, because Levi Casbolt took years to actually fix his goal kicking, and he actually not reliable, but he became better than what he was. But Cripps, I've not seen him do any work on his kicking, whereas Watson, it was clear on game day that he looked like he did a bit of work on his kicking, and he became, not the best kick, but he became a more reliable kicker than he was in his early days. And you can't say the same thing about Patrick Cripps having the work ethic. And
Lucky, what do you want him to do? Just practice kicking all the time?
Work on his kicking, improve.
He also has to be able to get on the training track to practice his kicking.
He has been. That's what
has been injured so much, though. He loses a bunch of his off season to being injured so often.
Okay, yeah, look, I love it, but again, he's putting himself there. So you could say that it's the club's fault, but it's also his fault for putting himself up to go, yeah, I'm right.
When you're a leader like that at a club, imagine it's really hard.
Leader. Hang on. Did you just call Patrick Cripps a leader? When did you see him come out and speak throughout the entire Teague saga? I saw him once.
Just in the change room.
No. I feel it. You look at all the clubs that have gone through fucking turmoil, and excuse that language. Trent Cotchin, he didn't have to come out back when, Richmond were copping a lot of crap in 2016. Yeah, he did. And look where it got him. Dyson Heffel, the amount of times he had to come out and support a Busher, which he probably, when he said probably didn't necessarily like him, came out and supported him. All these captains with clubs, when they were in turmoil, actually came out to speak. Scott Pendlebury's a good example. Remember 2017 when everyone was like Buckley this and Buckley that? Now, Pendlebury almost every week was coming out in support of Buckley. You cannot say the same thing about Cripps. You can't. You physically can't. You definitely you can't.
There are different types of leadership. I get that the whole fronting the media is a really good example of a good leader bloke, but there's so many different ways to be a leader other than fronting the media.
Teach players how to handball more than kick. Yeah, how does that work out for him? He's a shit kick, and
Paddy Cripps might not be the perfect footballer, right? But he will go into the trenches and he will be there with his teammates in the middle of the field. Okay, you can't say that he's not going to go there and put in effort.
Oh, no, I'm saying that he's probably
that is leadership.
I'm saying that he's not putting enough effort in to help himself out and improve his kicking.
So he's too selfless. You're saying he's put too much on the line for his team.
No, I'm not selfless. I'm not saying he's too selfish either, but I'm saying that he is He's going to be one of those players that, if he had have improved and did a lot more work on his kicking, he may have actually won that Brownlow back in 2019 when he was supposed to be favourite to win that. He could have, if he had done a lot more work on that. But unfortunately, it's not the case. I mean, all you have to do is just look at the meters as an average. And, people go on about how Lachie Neale's a handball machine and Tom Mitchell's a handball machine. They still accumulate the meters, as they still have impact with their ball. But you can't say the same thing about Cripps. He'll get these 2-meter handballs, and his opponents are already in either in his 50 or the defensive 50, because Cripps is so slow. He is cooked. He looks cooked. He needs to say himself, look, I just need to have a break because, I'm just physically drained. I cannot, I just don't see how people can just say, look, he's been a this and that and whatnot, because I reckon it was quite clear halfway through that, or probably at the latter part of 2019, Walsh was probably Carlton's best player in his first year.
So if you're saying that what Paddy Cripps needs is a break, then how can you also say that Adam Cerra is not going to come in and have the impact everyone expects?
Because, and this is based on like a team thing, like as I said, it's based around what your team does. It's all good. Look, Cripps did have to carry that 2018 season. I don't wish it on any player. You don't wish it on any player. To have to, was he the captain back then? 2018 was. You don't wish.
Was it him or was it Murphy?
I think it was. It may have been Murphy, but
what? I'll look it up.
But
so, keep going for a little bit, and I'll look it up.
Yeah, but it's all based on your work ethic and what you're willing to do to improve yourself. And the good examples, Melbourne. When they brought in Stephen May, they were supposed to have a top defense. Now they were so bad defensively, but they then improved. And then the other player for Carlton that I just don't see how people are. And no, it's not because he left the team that I follow. It's because
give me a second. It was Mark Murphy was the captain in 2018, and it was 2019 when Cripps and Doherty became co-captain.
Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that for me. But like Adam Cerra, he's another good example. It's well documented that he was told before a game that he had to shut down Charlie Cameron. And it's, as I say, it's been made, it's well known that he had a bit of a, let's just, I don't think tantrum's the right word. I think more so he had a bit of a disagreement with the club on that because he all he wanted to do was attack. And, as a defender, you've got to know when the time is right to attack and when it's time to find your man and man up. And he did not know. He didn't know how to do that. And same with Zach Williams. He's, both Sud and Zach Williams are getting paid midfield's money. And look, people might argue that, Cerra made the right call, but a lot of people are going to say that he chose the money, which it's also well documented that Carlton have, just like throwing the money out at everybody. I mean, half the people that are leaving their team supposedly are rumoured to go to Carlton. That Oliver there was that Hawthorn forward that was linked. You got Jared Brander. Multiple other players. I'm surprised that Bobby Hill wasn't rumoured to go to Carlton.
Actually, you forgot to when you're listing midfielders before. You forgot to talk about the guy they got from the Giants last year, Zach Williams.
He's not a midfielder, half-back.
Weren't they playing him in the midfield towards the end of last season?
Yeah, but he wasn't taken with the first-round pick.
Oh, okay. Yep, cool. Never mind. That's on me then.
Yeah. so to get back to, the entire point of what I'm saying here, you can have all the first round talent on your list, but it's the work that those players put in that, could have an effect on the team, might not have an effect. And I'm saying that, judging by those players that I've listed, Dale, O'Brien, Kennedy, Cripps, and Setterfield, I'm not confident that, Carlton will make that push for the 8 because, I don't necessarily see the work as a team, because it was interesting that Harry Mackay signed only a 2-year deal. Now, why is that interesting, you may ask? Because in 2 years' time, he is a free agent.
When did he sign the 2-year deal?
In the middle of the 2021 season, or the back end, and he becomes a free agent in 2023. That's when his contract runs out.
He could just be betting on himself that he could make more money in
Well,
2
if he
years' time.
did that, if he did that, then he could end up in the shoes of what Jaden Stevenson was in his back then, or back in 2019.
I don't think Harry Mackay is going to go place some bets and get himself in trouble.
Well, look,
just quietly.
You'd like to think that. You'd really like to think that, but look, it's I mean, on go.
Alrighty, now that discussion is done, time for something new in this podcast, and that is Loggie's useless stat. So, Loggie, take it away.
Right. So we all know the winner or the best player on the ground of a grand final is awarded the Norm Smith Medal, right?
Oh, now, yeah.
Well, it's not. Actually, you'd think that it'll go to the team that wins. The player that played for the winning team, but it hasn't been the case in recent. That's not always the case. A good example is Chris Judd back in 2005, winning that Norm Smith Medal, and the same with Nathan Buckley winning the O2. Now, some people will claim that Gary Ablett Sr. was the first player to win a Norm Smith Medal on a losing side, and fair enough, he kicked 9 goals. But that is not the case. The first player to win a Norm Smith Medal on a losing side was Maurice Rioli Sr. in 1982 for Richmond as they lost to Carlton in that grand final. So for all those people that think Gary Ablett Sr. was the first one, you need to get that out of your head and mark down Maurice Rioli.
It is a very exclusive club, though, isn't it?
It's a very exclusive club, yes. There's not many players that won a Norm Smith Medal for a losing side. So he is in an absolute exclusive club, something that you'd like to be in.
And I'm pretty sure Nathan Buckley won his because they used to close the voting at like halfway through the last quarter. And that point, I'm pretty sure Collingwood were actually winning that grand final. And then Brisbane stormed home and won. So,
well, there you go. That's something that I didn't know. But yeah, there we go. So that is my first useless stat. Can't wait to bring out next week's useless stat. I've already got it penciled down. I already know what I'm going to say.
Oh, he's already done all the hard work for it.
Yeah, I've already done all the hard work for the second useless stat.
And that is that. Thank you all for listening. And, that's the end of everything we had to say for this episode of the podcast. And, stay tuned to our socials. And, yeah.
Yes, our socials are on Instagram, All Sports 2021. And for Facebook, it's just All Sports. So, yeah, go like it up.
And don't forget, please let us know what you think of our discussion, whether or not you agree with us, disagree with us, or if you're partly in the middle. We won't judge. We can promise you that. Thank you for listening.
Absolutely. And let us know for any feedback and what you guys would like in future episodes. All right. See you next time.
Yeah. Everybody knows that I'm breaking down. Everybody knows I ain't faking now. Everybody knows my heart's vacant now. Yeah, she hates me now, I made mistakes but now I don't ever wanna be alone. I don't really ever feel at home. On my own, in the zone, that's the only way I know. Feeling low, about to blow back up. Here I won't ever let the doubt creep in. Gotta pop a couple more aspirin. I don't think I'll ever let you in. Easier to break it off best friends. I don't really understand